They sold you a carefully packaged lie. A sweet, poisonous lullaby. They whisper that intelligence is a number. An emotionless IQ score. A high mark on a test. An honor certificate framed and hung on a wall. They insist that wisdom lives in how many dry facts you can memorize, or how fast you can solve a complicated problem. If you've lived long enough, walked through enough seasons of loss and recovery, you'll understand there are days when you're right about everything, your scores look good, your resume shines, and yet your heart feels hollow. And there are days when you're not good at proving anything at all. But you know how to keep yourself steady. You know how to say one sentence that calms someone down. You know how to stop at the right moment, so you don't lose what matters. So where really does wisdom live? They lied, and they did it for convenience. Their convenience, because a definition that's easy to measure is easy to manage. A clear template is easy to rank. People can slot you into a drawer, good or bad, enough or lacking, worthy or not. And you'll train yourself to chase that yardstick, day after day, until you forget. Life is not an exam, and a human being is not a report card. This isn't an innocent misunderstanding, it's a deliberate mechanism of control. Civilized society has carved a narrow shackling definition of wisdom, simply to ensure that those who are easy to manage and steer, those who comply, feel safe and superior. They created an illusion of quantified certainty, a gilded cage that suits the nervous system. Maybe you've been there. That gilded cage sometimes goes by the name stability, sometimes following the proper process. Sometimes, don't make a big deal out of it. It's comfortable. It doesn't shame you. It doesn't make you stand out either. And that's exactly why so many people stay there for so long. Not because they're weak, but because they're tired. Because life already asks us to carry too much. Everyone wants something certain to hold on to. But ask yourself one very honest question. Does that certainty help you live more true to yourself? Or does it just keep you from being judged? Because a person who follows rules well and repeats knowledge smoothly will become a useful COG. An easily harvested source of energy in a power machine, far more easily than someone capable of independent thought and breakthrough action. They fear the unpredictable. They're terrified of real creativity. This isn't a search for wisdom, it's a hunger for obedience. And there's one more thing, very human, very real. As we get older, we realize the scariest thing isn't failure. It's living an entire life without truly being the author of our own life. You can do everything right and still feel, I don't belong to myself. That feeling isn't always a disorder. Sometimes it's simply a bell reminding you it's time to live more honestly. Real intelligence has nothing to do with the school. It has nothing to do with being smart in the way so-called polite society tries to define it. Real wisdom lives in the shadow, but let me say this clearly, in a safe and constructive way. The shadow is not a place where we become cold or calculating. It's where we store the parts we abandoned, the fear of rejection, the anger we shoved down, insecurity masked by a smile, needs we've never dared to name. The shadow is the part of us we don't want to look at, yet it quietly runs us. And true wisdom often begins with the question, am I reacting to the present or to an old wound? Comillas punto. It's the ability to strip bare other people's real motives, to see through layers of social masks, to notice the rot hidden beneath polished paint. It's the ability to read nonverbal signals, to catch the quiet fears and unspoken cravings of an opponent. It's knowing psychological effects and, more importantly, using them. But if you're listening this far, especially those who have passed 60, please take it one step further. Understanding other people's psychology is not so you can control them. It's so you don't get dragged around. So you recognize when a sentence is pressing on your fear. So you know when you're going along, simply because you're afraid of upsetting someone. And so you're clear-minded enough to say one very simple, very elegant sentence. No thank you. Comillas punto. True wisdom is leverage. But what is leverage, if not the ability to choose the right fulcrum? For someone who's lived, leverage isn't about making other people smaller. It's about making yourself steadier. That might be a healthy habit, a clear boundary, a circle of friends who know how to listen, a faith, a skill you've practiced for a lifetime, things that keep you from begging for approval from the outside. It is survival, in its most bare, unforgiving form. It's the ability to navigate chaos, to see the operating rules of the world, and more importantly, to see the weaknesses, the cracks in that structure. And some cracks are painfully ordinary. A family silent because no one has told the truth. A workplace exhausted because everyone is pretending they're fine. A relationship kept alive only because of fear of being alone. Seeing the crack isn't to judge. Seeing the crack is to heal, or at least to stop blaming yourself for things that were never yours alone to carry. True wisdom is power. And the power a respected, mature person needs isn't power to defeat others. It's power not to lose yourself. It's the ability to see reality as it is, instead of how we wish it would be. It's the ability to see reality in intense emotion, in upheaval, in words that make us wobble, and still keep our choice. That is absolute agency. You can't wait for the world's permission. You have to reshape the game. And reshaping might begin with something small. You stop over-explaining. You can't todafrafos apologizing for rightful boundaries. You can't todafrafos apolokupuchis. You can't todafrafos apolopuchis. You can't puchis. You can't todafrafos apolokupuchis. You can't todafrafos polopuchis. You can't todafrafos apolokupuchis. You can't todafras polokupuchis. You must justify. And you begin living like someone who understands. The time you have left is the most precious thing. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this with ruthless depth. She knew that effectiveness always outruns morality, and that the only intelligence worth anything is the kind that lets you seize and hold power. But here, I want to invite you to see one more layer, one that fits the inner life of older listeners. Effectiveness does not have to be harsh, and power does not have to be force. There is a soft kind of effectiveness, speaking at the right moment, staying quiet in the right place, leaving when you must, staying when it's worthy. There is a very quiet kind of power. Other people can't throw you into chaos, because you're clear about what you want, and what you don't. The greatest strategists in history understood a cold truth. While the majority stay busy polishing the look of intelligence, the few quietly build power. This is not an accident. If you look back on your life, you'll see it. There are people who speak beautifully, but rarely live what they say. And there are people who aren't loud, don't show off, but their lives are solid. They keep their word, they keep their boundaries, they care for their mind, they know how to love well. That is the power of consistency. It doesn't need a stage. What drives this difference? Fear. Most people fear isolation and fear personal responsibility, so they choose to seek social approval instead of self-rule. And if you're still listening, I want to ask something gently, but it may stay in your mind for a long time. Over the years, How many times have you chosen being approved of over being yourself? Not to blame yourself, just to recognize it, because recognition is the first step of freedom. Most, maybe 90, wither on the very first step. They live in psychological fog. They're trapped in the Dunning-Kruger effect, an illusion of their own understanding. They think they're making choices, but in reality they're running a script written for them by people who understand their fears and their craving for safety. This is the class suffering from learned helplessness. They trade away the power of independent thought for the comfort of compliance. But there is good news. No one is boxed in forever. A human life is long, and people can wake up, through a shock, a conversation, a loss, a quiet afternoon alone, when suddenly it hits, I don't want to live like this anymore. Comillas punto. And then some climb. There are 7 levels of intelligence, 7 stages of awakening. Today, we will tear these illusions open. We will place a naked mirror in front of your psyche. This will not be comfortable. It may hurt, because you're about to see exactly where you stand inside this matrix of power. But I'll tell it in a different way, not to scare you, but to clarify you. Not so you can crush anyone, but so you can lift yourself up. Not so you become a cold version of yourself, but so you become a more self-governed, more peaceful one. Look around. Observe closely. Walk down a crowded street at rush hour. Study the faces on the subway. What do you see? You see the sleepers. They're controlled by reflex, not strategy. They're led by small cravings, nameless envy, and a terrifying fear of facing the meaninglessness of their own life. They are supporting actors in someone else's play. And maybe you too have been a sleeper in your own way, when you worked yourself to exhaustion just to prove your worth, when you stayed quiet because you were afraid of making people uncomfortable, when you nodded while your heart disagreed. That doesn't make you bad. It only makes you tired. And when we're tired for too long, we forget we're allowed to choose. Don't confuse intelligence with functional awareness. A sleeper can have an astronomically high IQs. They can be an expert, a lawyer, a gifted engineer, but functionally their wakefulness is still asleep. Wisdom at this level is pure reactivity. The sleeper doesn't act. He is acted upon. His life is a chain of pre-programmed biological and social reflexes. The boss commands, he obeys. An ad flashes, he reaches for his wallet. This isn't loyalty. It's obedience born from panic at having to collide with life's sharp edges, from fear that drives him to avoid responsibility at all costs. Can you see it? Sometimes that programming is incredibly subtle. It isn't someone giving direct orders. It's the phrases repeated again and again. Don't do it differently. Don't bother anyone. As long as things are peaceful, that's enough. And then one day, we look back and realize we spent too many years avoiding trouble, until we forgot we also deserve joy. The fragility of belief, the sleeper's belief structure is empty. If you press him on why he believes what he believes, he collapses. He's a vessel, an empty box for other people's ideas. There's a powerful question you can ask yourself anytime you notice you're reacting too quickly. Is this belief mine? Or, did I borrow from someone? And if you can answer, you've already begun to wake up. He lives entirely in an external locus of control. Nothing is his fault. He refuses to face Jung's shadow, refuses to take responsibility for his mistakes, because the victim position is the easiest road. It exempts him from the hard work of self-direction, but please remember, taking responsibility is not the same as blaming yourself. Taking responsibility is taking the steering wheel back. You don't need to be perfect to be the owner of your life. You only need to be awake enough to say, "Here, I can choose differently." Comillas punto. Psychologically, the sleeper fears autonomy. Freedom, to him, is not a gift. It's an unbearable burden of existential choice. He longs for a master, for a clear structure. Surrendering responsibility is his greatest comfort. They prioritize fitting in over truth. They are batteries, cold, rechargeable energy sources powering systems built by higher levels of intelligence. And here's a moment I'd like to gently invite you to interact, like a living room conversation. Have you ever had a season in life where you felt like you were just running the schedule, not truly living? If yes, you can leave a comment, no need to explain much, just one sentence. Sometimes naming our experience is a way of returning power to ourselves. The pain you feel, the persistent sense that your life isn't truly yours, that is not a symptom of clinical depression. It's a sharp, honest signal of reality breaking through the anesthesia. When a sleeper wakes up, the first thing that happens isn't wisdom. It's noise. And that noise can look like confusion, bitterness, or the urge to prove I get it. The imitator appears when someone discovers the world is more complex than they thought. And they rush to find a new outfit. The outfit of "I already know." Comillas punto. The imitator has seen through the curtain and recognized a brutal truth. The world is a power game, and intelligence is the supreme currency used to buy external validation. But his wisdom is synthetic. In a more everyday way, this is when we start using pretty words, pretty concepts, pretty quotes to cover a deep fear. If they know I'm still unclear, they won't respect me. And then we speak more than we understand. We argue more than we listen. We get busy being right instead of busy living. He weaponizes jargon, deploying complex terms he only half understands. The point of the performance isn't clarity, it's intimidation, it's pure social signaling. If you've met someone like that, or seen a piece of yourself like that, don't rush to despise it. Behind that display is often a trembling heart. And the path of growth here is moving from "I need to look smart" to "I'm brave enough to be honest that I'm learning." Comillas punto. At level 2, intelligence is degraded into a performance, a costume designed precisely for the ego. He isn't seeking knowledge, he's seeking the aesthetic of intelligence. And then, if that person is courageous enough, they walk through an important door, the door of silence. They begin to understand that value isn't in winning arguments. Value is in building a solid life, living with boundaries, with quality, with kindness toward yourself. This is where calculation can be understood in a grown-up sense, not calculating other people, but calculating the long game for your own mind. You begin to ask, what is truly worth my time? What is draining me? What gives me peace? And you gradually step into a different kind of intelligence, the intelligence of choice. When you can see the rules, the moral values, the social contracts, you start to notice. Some things are conventions, some things are core. Some things should bend, some things should be held. And the strength of someone who has lived is knowing the difference. To rise, you must end the habit of clinging only to personal safety, but not by becoming hard, by becoming clear that you're not here to please everyone. Clear that you don't need to win every debate. Clear that you have the right to leave places that make you smaller. If we speak of the operator, the puppet master, the builder, I want to translate them into inner steps of maturity. The one who acts responsibly, the one who influences through sincerity, the one who builds healthy living systems, and finally, the one who is sovereign. Not sovereign through coldness, but through peace. Because the final level many older people reach for isn't actually above others. It's lighter in the heart. It's when praise and criticism no longer yank you around. You live at your own rhythm. You know what is enough. You know what you don't need. You have a quiet space inside that the outside world can't easily touch. And when you stand in that quiet space, you can see all the tension, all the drama, all the politics, all the noise, and it's all just a game. A game you don't have to play anymore. You only have to stand there, observe. And in that silent observation, you find the only thing that truly matters. Power. Ultimate power. Ultimate power over yourself.